right, everybody, welcome to BO Boys for Monday, October 28th. Fuck it, it's a raw feed. We're doing it live. I'm Clayton.
Yeah, I'm Pat. Clayton, huge weekend this weekend. Huge comic book movie weekend. I mean, a big one dropped. So we had to bring in our chief comic book correspondent from the Direct, from Cinema Spending. You know him, you love him. The one and only David Thompson is here. David, welcome back to the BO Boys.
Thanks, guys. It's great being here. I'm excited to talk about comic book movies, Venom, the end of Venom, the final strut, as they call it. Yeah, happy to be here. I wish there was a little bit more positive, better news, but honestly, not that surprised.
Not that's. I mean, when you got onto this stream, I mean, of course, the first thing you did was say, "Hey guys," because you're a good person who's brought up correctly. You say, "Hey,"
And a
but
YouTuber.
then the next thing you said, David, was "Yikes," and it wasn't directed at Clayton Sunglasses. It was, I think, directed at what we're going to talk about in this top five. So, Clayton, could you give a yikes-filled plow for the box office weekend of Friday, October 25th?
Number one, Venom: The Last Dance made $51 million in its first frame. Number two, Smile 2 made $9.4 million, down 59%. It added 5 theaters. It's at $40.7 million in its second weekend. Number three, a newbie, Conclave, made $6.5 million in its first weekend. Number four, The Wild Robot made $6.5 million, down 36%. It is at $111.3 million in its fifth weekend. It did lose a good number of theaters. It lost 402 theaters. Number five, We Live in Time, the A24 movie, made $4.8 million plus 15%. It added 1,979 theaters. It is at $11.7 million in its third weekend of release. And number six, we're going there. Terrifier 3, $4.7 million, down 49%. It lost 42 theaters, but it's at $44.5 million in its third weekend of release. That is your top six. And you know what? Just for the heck of it, lucky number 11, Beetlejuice still holding on to the top 10, $3.2 million, down 35%. It lost 377 theaters. It is at $288.7 million in its eighth weekend of release. And out of the top 10, Joker Folie à Deux made $600,000 in its fourth weekend. It is at $57.8 million, which is under Transformers 1, which is at 57.9.
Yeah. Is this going to make less than Morbius did total? Right? Did Morbius make more than 57? I mean, The Flash definitely did. The Flash opened to
55.
Yeah. This is incredible. I mean, Joker Folie à Deux is still in 1,200 theaters. What do we think is going on here? I mean, do we think that Zaslav Warner Brothers have pictures at this point over these theater owners? Why is this still in any theaters right now? The per-screen average for Joker Folie à Deux is $483. That's less than Saturday Night. That is less than a movie called Your Monster from Vertical Entertainment. It's about Goodrich level. I mean, why is this in any theaters anymore? Is it just, do people feel bad for Joker at this point? Are these pity screenings?
Potentially. I think there. I think so. I think there's maybe some lingering curiosity with those that saw the first one and never got around to the second one until a few weeks later. Even though the theater count has dropped significantly, like even just the amount of screens that it's on. I know, like at my local theater this weekend, it tanked. Like it is just basically no longer in like the local theater that I normally go to. By the way, quick, Morbius did make over $73 million. Wow. So yeah, Morbius will definitely make at this point more than Joker 2, which is unbelievable. I mean, honestly, like it can't go understated how unbelievable that is. Going into 2024, that was one of my, I think I had it at number 4. In terms of like what I expected and projected for the entire year, highest grossing movies. and felt, in a way, at least 6 months ago, it felt pretty safe. The first trailer was really good, a lot of positive buzz. We've talked about it before, bringing in Lady Gaga, all these things. And I feel like, honestly, especially with comic book movies, since Avengers Endgame, but really the last couple of years, word of mouth has never been more important.
Yes.
There's not as much, I think, baseline general interest, DC, Marvel, whatever, as there used to be when the MCU was at its peak and when DC was still kind of trying at that time. And even like when, say, Venom 1 came out and then Venom 2 came out right before No Way Home. Morbius, didn't do great, but still, like, Joker completely just tanking it. And honestly, anecdotally, I haven't heard anyone say anything positive about seeing that movie, and like that says something, at least to me. I mean, I cannot say that for Venom. There has been positive word of mouth about that movie, but maybe not as much as they wanted.
Right. And we will get to Venom, but before we do, let's just go through a couple of quick hits.
Well, can I speak on Joker really fast?
Oh, he has more to say on Joker Folly Doo-Doo. Of course, the floor is yours. The court, much like it was for Joker, is yours.
Yeah, let me do my Foghorn Leghorn imitation here real quick, a la the Joker. So here's the thing with this, is that Joker, the reason why people thought it was going to actually do well is it did something that Venom 3 didn't do, which was had an added value element, like how Venom 2 had with Carnage. I mean, Lady Gaga plus Harley Quinn, that's a value add, right? Venom 3 didn't have that. And quickly, I'll tell you why Joker is still in theaters. It is to keep juror number 2 out of theaters. Yeah. This is Warner Brother and Zaslav's excuse to Clint, a living legend, as to why he only has 50 theaters. Oh, I'm so sorry. We're contracted with Folia Doo-Doo for another couple weeks. We can only give you 50. We're so sorry, Clint. We're so sorry. Which they're probably not saying they're sorry to him, because they're basically kicking him to the curb. A living legend who made so much money for them only a couple years ago pre-COVID. And I know we'll get to this on the preview, so I don't want to waste it.
But he never was a Dr. Pimple Popper, and that's what Zaslav is interested in.
That's right. He's not my 1,000-pound life. He's not my 1,000-pound wife, and that's his problem. So I think that we'll get into this on the preview, how steamed I am about this, but that is the reason. The reason why Joker Folia Doo-Doo is still in any theaters is to block out Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, that is a great theory. And, to tease the next episode, the preview episode, juror number 2 opening in 50 theaters, Granddaddy might have to come home on the next episode. That's all we'll say. So get ready for that one. But
he's slowly making his way home.
We had to tell him to start getting here from now, because it's going to take him the next 3 days to get to the podcast studio. But some quick hits. Clayton, do you declare Saturday Night Dead came in number 12?
We talked about this. You had to bring it up. We talked about it's Saturday Night Dead, 100%. This is dead as an Oscar movie. It's dead as a box office film. Nobody cared. We cared. We cared. And there were certain people in the screening in New York City the opening night of this movie that cared. But beyond that, nobody cares.
Nobody cared. Number 8. Clayton, a movie that you did not mention in your plow, but a potential Oscar frontrunner, Anora from Neon, the new Sean Baker movie. I was going to say Simon Baker because, of course, I was thinking of Simon Rex. But the new Sean Baker movie, Anora, went wider, but it's only in 34 theaters. Wow. When it came in number 8 at $867,000, now up to $1.6 million. Do we think that this is a movie that has potential to get to a mainstream audience? David, you're of course a comic book guy, but you are a man of the people. Do you think do you think that Sean Baker's Anora has a chance? Maybe not to be Everything Everywhere All at Once, and not that type of indie breakout, but something that could get to a respectable number to get the Oscar noms it needs.
There's some potential. I mean, there's been a lot of positive, like you mentioned earlier, like word of mouth is king for all movies, generally speaking. And there's been a lot of positive word of mouth with Anora. I'm not sure. We'll see. Like, this weekend, it wasn't necessarily like it doesn't necessarily pop off in terms of like the list of top 20 movies of this weekend or anything like that. So we'll see next week. I think the one problem with that, like you mentioned, Everything Everywhere All at Once, that came out in kind of more of a dead time in a sense compared to right now, where like there are like a lot of different options for people to go see. Arguably, like for some people, maybe too many. I know personally, speaking of Saturday night, we wanted to go see it this past weekend, and the screenings, there was like 2 of them a day over the weekend, and it was like 1 p.m. and 11 p.m.
Yep.
Give me something better than that. Like take a Venom off, please. Put one of the Venoms, just scrap one of the 3 p.m. or 6 p.m. Venoms and give me Saturday night at one point. So yeah, I think kind of the fight for screens will be interesting. There will need to be, I think, a like, an audience movement where it's like, more and more people want to see it. The word of mouth really spreading. We'll see how it performs in terms of like, awards and stuff like that. But I'm not too bullish on its outlook box office wise.
All right.
I mean, here's the problem. It's neon. This is not an A24 movie. This is a neon movie. And we had Long Legs with neon, and that was like a blip. That was an outlier. Neon is not a studio, and I know we've seen Anora commercials and Anora posters and Anora Subway ads, and we've seen those because we live in a major metropolitan city.
Yeah. Well, we live in Anora's hometown. I mean, Anora is set in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, New York. So that's coastal elites. This is the hometown for Anora.
She's in our backyard, but
she's in our backyard.
That's the issue. It's a neon thing, because when you look at what A24 is doing with We Live in Time, right? I mean, dissimilar movies, but both Oscar-y movies. But that is doing surprisingly well. And Anora's going to do what it's going to do. It's going to get noms. That it doesn't matter. Movies can make negative sense and get nominations. The success of this movie financially and at the box office is not going to matter for its nominations. Saturday Night needed that. Anora doesn't. Anora has all the buzz it's going to need. It has all the people who went to all the screenings who are loving it. Right. So, I don't think, Sean Baker has never been a beloved figure to the Academy. So I still think that it's going to be an uphill battle, but I don't think the box office of Nora really matters at all for nominations.
So you mentioned We Live in Time. The stars, of course, Miss Flo and Spider-Man himself, Andrew Garfield. So David, what about your local theaters? Are they showing We Live in Time? Are there screenings that are, in prime time for this movie?
Yeah, definitely. Here in Atlanta, I think there was a big it opened what was that now? I guess kind of 2 weeks ago. 2 weekends ago, I suppose, wide. And this weekend though, like there was definitely more screeners. It definitely expanded a big time. And I think for that movie, so many people love that film that have seen it. At least, everyone knows it's like a tearjerker and it's going to make you cry. But the star power is just so strong there. And like so many people can just go out and say, hey, go see the movie for Florence Pugh. Go see it for Andrew Garfield. And that's all you have to sell someone on. At least like my generation, my demographic, that's literally like all you have to say. And boom. I mean, the love there is for Florence Pugh. I love Andrew Garfield. Like he's one of my favorite, arguably my favorite living actor, honestly. Wow. But Florence Pugh is just like, everyone loves her, and everyone loves Andrew Garfield too, but there's such like a kind of I wouldn't say a cult following, but it's just like so many people just bring so much energy to whatever she does. And like, I know from the comic book space, there's so many people that are like, why is she in Marvel? Why is she doing Thunderbolts? And I kind of see what they're saying. I'm glad she's doing, everything right. We Live in Time, and we also get Thunderbolts asterisks down the road. Like, I'll take both. But not everyone wants to see her doing everything.
Yeah, I didn't even think of them until you reminded me that she's in Thunderbolts, that these are both current Marvel stars. I mean, Andrew Garfield.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Andrew Garfield will don the Spidey suit again someday. We have not seen the last of him as an on-screen Spider-Man. Is that, at this point, do you think that's fair to say?
Yep. At this point, I would be more surprised if he doesn't than if he hangs it up. I think he will definitely be back.
Right. So you've got two current Marvel stars in this movie, and that probably helps. Maybe people want to see Marvel stars on screen together, just not in Marvel movies. And that's why We Live in Time is somewhat overperforming right now. Because everyone knows them. They love Spider-Man. They love Black Widow daughter. What is Miss Flo's character in
Yelena Belova? Yeah,
Black Widow. They want to see Yelena Belova. And they want to see middle Spider-Man.
Peter 3.
Peter 3. Yeah, so it's the per screen average is not blowing anyone away. It did only average 1,600. It got a huge theater bump, which is why it did its 4.8. So I can't say right now that this is fully catching on, but you look at stuff like Saturday Night, and you look at some of these other indie Oscar hopefuls, and this could have totally tanked. So,
but Pat, let's not discount, because so many of these movies that tried to go wide have not done this. Like the fact that this is already at 11, like let's respect this movie for what it's doing. And yeah, that was my thought on this, is that this movie shows that there's life outside of superhero movies and after superhero movies, right? For stars. That's positive. I do think there's a level of people who are saying like, oh, good, I can see these people not in spandex, right? Unless there's a scene where, it goes through their lives. So, of course, they probably dress up for Halloween, and I'm sure there's spandex involved. But they are not in spandex the whole time, right? But when you look at this movie, and then you look at Conclave, which is also a movie that people claim isn't made anymore, both in the top 5, right? Again, 6 million and 4 million. Those are not like Bafa Bobo, but for these types of movies, this is good. This is a like nice looking top 5 for what you have. Plus, with Wild Robot, which we all know is also just the pipeline for young adults to get to Terrifier 3. The fact that it's still doing well, but that money still goes in the Wild Robot's coffers. So, although it does owe Terrifier 3 probably conservatively $20 million.
Easily, yeah. and you don't want to steal from Arthur Clown. If you've learned anything from these movies, he will get his. So
he will chainsaw Robot. He will chainsaw Robot in 4. In Terrifier 4, he's chasing down a robot and he's chainsawing it.
Oh, that is, and I'm sure if he doesn't listen, people close to Damien Leone, the director of the Terrifier movies, they listen. That is an idea that's going to get to him. We've got a chainsaw robot to show Wild Robot what they did to us. So I definitely could see that in a future Terrifier. So yeah, Conclave, 6.5 million per screen average is pretty good, 3,700. It's the type of box office gross that now firmly makes this a Oscar contender. Because I do think with some of these movies, the box office gross is more about setting up their Oscar chances than it is predicting, oh, this is going to make 40, 50, 60 million. Conclave probably won't do that. But if it gets to 30 million, then it makes Ralph Fiennes a much stronger Best Actor contender. Is Conclave a movie, David, that is at any of your local multiplexes?
Yeah, definitely. I think Conclave, like I was happy to see, I haven't seen the movie, but I was happy to see that it opened, I thought, really well this weekend. I felt like there was actually some, chatter going on about it. One of those films that I think for a lot of people came out of nowhere. But, overall, yeah, I think it's definitely been drawing in some audiences, clearly based on, you mentioned the, per screen, per theater. But yeah, it's interesting this entire weekend, as kind of we push through here, like there are so many like subtle hits happening right now. We mentioned the Wild Robot, and I'm just thrilled. Maybe some people are going to see Terrifier. I'm thrilled to see how that movie is doing, because that's the kind of thing that, like, for me personally, I want to see more of those original animated movies made at a place like DreamWorks. And sure, I will be going to see Shrek 5, of course, but it doesn't always have to be Shrek 5. And there's been so many, like with Disney and DreamWorks, and Illumination, not so much. Swings and misses when it comes to animation. And I feel like that's like really a space where once those hit, it can become such a 4-quadrant thing, like where I'm excited about it and my 7-year-old nephew is, right?
Yes.
So
And you don't get to Shrek 5 unless you've had Shrek 1.
Yes.
And that's why something like Wild Robot is important. Not just because it's a good movie, as your 7-year-old nephew likes it, this or that. It's important that Wild Robot is a hit so that someday we could get to Wild Robot Part 5. And that
the live action, right? Yeah.
And then we get the live action remake. And then we get the weird thing that's called the live action remake, even though it is still mostly animated. That's where we want to be, but we don't get there. We don't get to 5 Wild Robots. We don't get to the Wild Robot ride and experience at Universal Studios until Wild Robot 1 is a hit. So that is why new original ideas are so important. They're so important because we cannot have sequels. We cannot have amusement park rides. We can't have live action remakes until we've had original new ideas.
But that's the thing. But at the same time, I mean, I absolutely agree with that. But and at the same time, people deride and lament sequels when sequels are the movies that are making originals possible. That's the other thing, is that you have to put up with some sequels in order for these studios to be able to make enough money to try something new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the fact that Inside Out 2 did Bafa Bobo means that is going to allow that pipeline to be slicked so that another middle-aged man can create some movie that will just be staring at his own navel, talking about his anxiety or whatever. That is what Pixar's bread and butter is, and they need these sequels. They need Toy Story 5.
Yeah.
So some middle-aged man can work out his issues.
Yeah.
And make
his
kids
issues in some kind of, original fantasy cartoon. Yeah.
Absolutely. That is coming. There is going to be a Albert Brooks mother type movie that is going to be about koala bears or some shit.
Yes.
And it'll be directed by a 45-year-old man, and 45-year-old men will go see it and creep out kids that are sitting next to him.
Yeah.
That is the circle of life.
Finding Dory. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
No.
Because it's money for theatrical.
It's money for theatrical. So, looking at Conclave, I do want to throw out one possible explanation for it overperforming, finishing number 3. We're in the heart of spooky season. Halloween is this Thursday. This past weekend was almost pretty much the Halloween weekend because it's the weekend before the holiday, even though next weekend will be closer to the holiday. This is the weekend leading into the holiday. Do we think that Conclave got a little boost because it's a movie with priests? And I do think at this point in theatrical, a priest or a nun in a movie is a horror movie. It reads as a horror movie. Do we think that there was some audience that went to Conclave because they thought, is this an off-brand nun sequel? Is this an exorcism movie? Is this a horror movie? We say all the time about A24 promoting movies as horror when they're not. Did any teenagers go to Conclave thinking they were getting some kind of priest, devil, exorcism movie?
I actually think you're correct on that. I think definitely.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Clayton, do you think that teenagers thought Conclave would be a horror movie and instead it was a Oscar-y drama starring Ray Fiennes?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody knows what a conclave actually is.
Yes.
Right? And it sounds...
By the poster, it looks like a... Yeah. I was going to say the poster, I feel like looks kind of like it could be a horror. It could pass as a horror movie.
Yeah. I mean, the definition is a private meeting or secret assembly, right? That's scary.
That's scary.
Because when priests get together, ellipses.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When nuns get together.
Oh, sure.
Ellipses.
Ellipses.
Like,
yes. Yes.
Who knows? That's a scary title. That's a scary poster, and that's a scary word and a scary thing.
And we're not accusing anyone of anything. We're just saying ellipses.
Ellipses.
Just here saying ellipses. So, here's the thing. I haven't seen this movie. Clayton hasn't seen this movie. David, you said you haven't seen this movie. At this point, are we sure that Conclave is not a horror movie? Because that...
Can't rule it out.
We can't rule it out. if we can't rule it out, 3 people in the industry who live and breathe movies and information about movies, we cannot rule out that Conclave is a horror movie. If you're a teenager who's just skateboarding around town, smoking a doob, go for it, and you're going to your local mall movie theater, your friends, how could you rule out that Conclave is not a horror movie?
Yeah.
You can't rule it out as a teenager if we can't rule it out.
Yeah, dude. Legalize it. And by legalize it, I mean skateboarding. It's not a crime.
Yeah. We gotta vote yes on Prop 88, which is legalized skateboarding, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So Conclave, yeah, I think we're all in agreement. It gets the October horror movie bump just by nature of being a movie with a priest in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of those movies where it almost benefited from not being as promoted as maybe it could have been. Where
Yes.
it's like, oh, what's this? That looks interesting. Like you mentioned, the whole priest, the poster, maybe you saw one trailer in a theater, or you just kind of, saw what was going on. I feel like this is kind of the time of year, I feel like, where a lot of people, are kind of searching right now for like what to go see on a weekend. And this was a great weekend, I think, for just like, you could see literally anything, any kind of like genre variety. And we saw that, in the rundown today. Like, and I think that almost took away a little bit from Venom. Like there wasn't that like huge pop sensation of like, oh my gosh, this is the next Spider-Man spinoff. Meh, it's like, yeah, it's there. It's in the most theaters. It's kind of like set up the best. But I mean, honestly, I feel like most people that went to see other movies this weekend had a better time.
Well, I mean, let's get into it because, you're our chief comic book correspondent. So, David, going into this weekend, what was the buzz around comic book land? Did you guys start to feel this coming? Did you feel that lack of buzz, that lack of urgency, that lack of caring? Or is this, because this is 51 million is what it's being called at? I
Yeah.
mean, it's what, 40 million less than what the last one made? It's a huge drop off. It's definitely under projection. So what was the buzz going into this? Let's start there. Did you feel this coming?
Yeah, it's funny. So I was really high going into the movie on it. Like I was very bullish. I was thinking it was going to land somewhere in between Venom 1 and Venom 2. I felt like there was still that base Venom fan base that would show up. And honestly, I have talked to a lot of people that were like excited for the film. I think when saw it, maybe they didn't actually end up going, based on the numbers. But there definitely were a lot of people that like were fascinated in seeing what happens in the next Venom movie. And for me, I think what really happened with this one was there wasn't it's word of mouth, but there really wasn't a thing about this film that stuck out in any real way for people. The first Venom movie, that's as simple as it is. It's the first Venom movie, and people love Venom. And there was this real hope that it could be something better than it probably actually was, even though, in my opinion, I'm not a critic, but, I'm not I would say the first one is probably the best one. And then the second one's whatever. The second one made so much money, in my opinion, and I don't care what anyone says. Like, Carnage in the movie, Woody Harrelson's in the movie. Also, it opens 2 months for No Way Home. And all of a sudden, the whole leak came out of like, Spider-Man's going to be in the post-credit scene. He was, sort of. Boom. There's your 90 million. There's your check for Sony's biggest cash cow once again coming back. And now, with this one, we're leading into Craven. No one cares about, right?
Boy.
No one knows. And like, they're announcing Spider-Man stuff right now for 2026. Nothing's connected. And the movie itself, for me, like just getting into the actual film, the movie itself is just an epilogue to Let There Be Carnage. It's not even really like its own thing that's really worth being there. It's just Sony pumping these things out every few years to make it work and make it happen. But I don't think anyone is really like, oh, you have to go see it, because most people, I've seen some say it's the best one, but honestly, in my actual personal spaces, most people think it's either the worst one or at least the second worst one.
Yeah.
Second
yeah,
best.
It's the disconnection. You could feel it in this one. You could feel how meaningless this movie is. And not that that needs to be the case for these superhero movies. I don't think the era of the fully connected MCU would continues, but this movie really did feel like, in some ways, a burn off for a movie this big. You know, I saw this, Clayton and I saw this last night, and it really did feel, even aside from the fact that they were telling you this is the last dance, this movie did feel superfluous and did feel like something that had been sitting on the shelf for a while. There was just an air of not a huge movie cast over. And I know Sony does a good job on their budgets. They don't, spend $200 million like Joker did. They did 110, 120 for this. But there is something about that coming up on the screen, because in this movie you basically only see Venom hanging out in a desert, hanging out in an Area 51 abandoned basically parking lot. And when he's in the casino, he's not in the Venom suit. Like, there is something about this movie that felt small, and I do think that came across.
They made a plot point of the film so he wouldn't go into Venom mode. Like, he wouldn't become full Venom. I remember I went with my buddy. I took him to see it early. He's like, "Oh, I'm jacked. I like Let There Be Carnage. That final fight was really cool." We walked out of there like, man, I wouldn't recommend that film. Like, he was coming in like as an actual like fan of the first couple of films for like the silly wackiness that it is, just for like the almost like live action anime of it all, where it's just like madness and crazy fights and stuff. And Let There Be Carnage had that, to me at least, that like fun ending. This one didn't even have that, and it was written into the script where you wouldn't see Venom for so much of the movie. And that, like, coming into the box office perspective and budget perspective, like you mentioned, it stuck out to me immediately. I'm like, oh my gosh, like the amount, how much easier it is seemingly for them to do the whole, like, Venom head off the side of Tom Hardy instead of the entire look. That bothered me so much.
Yeah. You really did feel them cutting corners on this one. And, we're not critics, but there was so much confusion in what the plot of this was supposed to be. And that's always apparent when 4 different characters at 4 different times have to reiterate what is going on in this movie. You know, the key, what was that called? The Nexus?
It wasn't the Nexus. It was the, I forget, but yeah, something like that.
Nexus?
Codex.
The Codex, yes.
Yeah.
The Codex was explained 4 different times. Clayton, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Clayton and I saw this movie last night. Clayton was asleep for roughly 75% of the movie. He was a sleepy boy. Clayton, did you ever hear the word Codex in any of the waking minutes that you watched Venom 3, Venom's Last Dance?
Yes.
You did hear Codex.
It started with Noel in his easy chair.
Yes.
And spoiler. And he was talking about go get my Codex.
Mm-hmm.
And the monsters were going to go get the Codex. And then I met Juno Temple's character.
Yep.
I found out about her brother and his dream that she is now living.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I met Christmas. I met
so you did meet all these
characters.
I
met the angry military guy.
Yeah.
And then I saw Venom be drunk and do a cocktail. You like a homage to the movie Cocktail, because this is the week for it.
Yeah.
And then I fell asleep.
And you fell asleep. Okay.
And then I woke up during the.
And let's do no spoilies, because people may still see this. But
I woke up during the cacophonous shit show of a special effects nightmare that was the third act, which is all these movies.
Yeah.
And so that's what I saw. And I'll say, with only seeing that, I can say definitively, this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Okay.
Just from that sample size, 25% of this movie was enough. Sometimes 25% is enough.
Yeah. It's pretty rough. When we're not critics, this, I do predict, this is a movie, and David, speak to it if you disagree. I do think this movie is going to fall off the face of the earth in the weeks going forward. This does not feel like a movie that will have legs. B- cinema score. I mean, what are you getting out of the audience responses you're hearing out of the comic book world? Do you think this is a movie that's going to write itself? And 51 million, it opened and it's doing well worldwide. But are you feeling like this is a movie that's going to write itself and hold going into Halloween, or it's going to fall off a cliff?
Yeah, it's a great question because like I mentioned, I went into this weekend really bullish, really like excited box office wise, thinking that it would overperform just like the first two did for me, where it's like I went into those films thinking like, especially Let There Be Carnage and during the state of COVID and stuff, being like, we'll see. And this one let me down. So I kind of expect that again. But looking at what's opening next weekend, I mean, it really wouldn't stun me if it actually does hang around a little bit, because there is, in a really weird way, there is, I think, more of we're seeing it in the box office already. There is more of a desire for fans of the comic books, just saying generally, kind of like overall, than Folie à Deux, than Joker, And I think, and in a sense, we have no one saw Joker. We have Venom right now. Craven will be its own craziness, and then it's not until Captain America 4 in February. So there might be some hope for Venom, and I know overseas it's doing really well, too, which will probably, obviously help Sony make more of these garbage movies in the future. But I do think there is a chance it has some legs. Yeah.
So, we'll see. I mean, I think the thing that this movie has going for it is you look at that release schedule and there is nothing quote unquote big until Red One on November 15th. And Red One is going to be what Red One's going to be. We could actually get you a prediction on that a little later. So there is a dearth now of blockbusters, depending on how high you are on here, the Robert Zemeckis film that is shot from one angle for the entire movie. That could be
I'm excited for that movie. I don't care what anyone says.
I'm very excited about it too, but whether it's a blockbuster, is left to be seen. But so it does have that. It has a runway of just weeks and weeks without a huge movie. You mentioned though Craven, and this Venom is of course connected to the Spider-Man villains. Sony wanted to make that its own universe. There's mention of Sinister Six in this movie, I think, because they mentioned the Six. David, is that the Sinister Six that they are talking about in this? Are they trying to put these guys together?
I mean, you can't put anything past them. I do not think, though, it'll be like a Sinister Six setup per se. I mean, it's unbelievable how long Sony's been kind of like teasing Sinister Six and like wanting to do that and just never doing it. And we kind of got a look of what that could look like. And we got kind of a version in No Way Home. But no, I don't think so. Even though that film will have, I mean, the Rhino's in it like 100%. And that film will have multiple of its own villains and, its own kind of, sinister squad. But I don't know if it's going to be the proper Sinister Six. And as a Spider-Man fan, I really hope not, because we'll talk about it probably another day. But even though the first 15 minutes that aired at New York Comic-Con, people were actually pretty happy about in terms of like the brutality of the fighting that was shown.
Okay.
I don't have any faith in that movie.
Okay. So do you think we will ever, and I guess they're not the Sinister Six, but they are the Sony movies that have come out. We're never going to see Madame Web, Morbius, Venom, and Craven all hanging out eating shawarma in a movie together.
No, I highly doubt that. I feel like for Sony, they've just been trying out different things. They greenlit that Amazon, Spider-Man Noir series with Nick Cage and stuff. They're trying to make, I've always said this, they're trying to just milk their cash cow wherever they can, however they can, which is Spider-Man. And it's, his expanding universe and expanding villains. And the thing is with Sony, for me, with their Marvel Cinematic Universe, if you even want to call that, there's no plan with that. You could even see it in one of the worst movies we've seen with Venom 3. Like, there wasn't even really a plan for that movie. Well, a bunch of symbiotes are just kind of there, and it's like, and there's these aliens, xenophages that no one's gonna like care about or pay attention to that are coming to fight them. And it's like this like video game basically brought to life, but not really in a positive way.
Not in a positive way.
So no, and the thing is too, like on that point, I feel like with now Spider-Man 4 moving forward and coming out July 2026 and right after Avengers and all this, things are going to shift back to Disney having a little bit more control over the character. And every time Disney has gotten the chance, they have basically just tried to ignore everything Sony is doing as much as they possibly can. And I think that's the direction that we're heading, especially now that they're done making Venom movies.
Yeah. I got to ask you about this villain that's in Venom. This Null, who, as Clayton said, sits in a chair for most of the movie. Is this the first villain? And I know there's been Bond villains who mostly sit in a chair, but at least they spin around in their chair. They'll spin into frame in their chair. Dr. No, he'll have a kitty cat on his lap when he's in the chair, and then he spins. This Null sits in a chair facing forward the entire movie. And his plight is he is not allowed to leave the chair, and he's got to send all these monsters to fight Venom to get a key to get him out of a chair. Is this a big villain and character in the comic books? Were comic book fans, were readers of the Direct excited to finally see Null sit in his chair? Or did they screw Null up? Is this what everyone wanted? Like, to me, I mean, Clayton, this is the worst Null I've seen since Luke Null on Saturday Night Live. You know, this is perhaps our worst Null ever. So, David, tell us, this Null, did they screw him up, or is this what he was always supposed to be?
Yeah, I mean, Null is a relatively new character to the comics. I think he got introduced in Marvel Comics within the last 10 years or so. So he's kind of one of those guys.
Okay.
And really all Null is, first off, I would not say there's like this overwhelming interest in Null.
Okay.
But the interest in Null is that he is a very powerful villain. You know, it's like one of those where, sure, he may not be the most popular, but he is like I hate to say it like this, an Avengers level threat, right? Where it's like, oh shit, like if he's out and about, like that's really, really bad because he is supposed to be kind of like the Godfather, the creator of all the symbiotes. And he has like the Necro Sword, which was in, I don't want to get into this, but it was in Thor Love and Thunder, and Gore has it there. And like, it's like, how does that even work? But it's different universes, I guess. So all that being said, it's very nerdy, and like, sure, I think some Venom fans were excited to see Null, and they've been very open about the idea and the plans that Null is going to return. Right? This was the director. She said this is the introduction of Null into this universe, into the Spider-Man universe, and maybe he'll have a future. I don't think that's really like Andy Serkis apparently was the voice. I don't think any of that and anything that he did in that movie got any fans any more excited, you know, even though he's supposed to be this kind of like otherworldly threat that would be, you know, it would take more than just one Venom. It would take a Sinister Six and Spider-Man or whatever that team would be.
Right. You would have to get Kraven in there to fight Null. You'd have to get Madame Web would have to finally open up that Diet Pepsi can in order to defeat Null in his chair. Like, that is the level of threat that this Null poses.
Right.
So do you think we will ever see Null again on the big screen? I mean, obviously, life is long. 20 years from now, there'll be a Null movie. But in this incarnation of movies, do you think Null is one and done? I mean, Clayton, is this a one season and out for Null?
Well, let me just say that I feel like there's as good a chance that Star Fox shows up in a movie as Null. So I'm going to say, Null, it ain't looking good for you, my friend.
What about you, David? Do you think we will see Null face off with an Andrew Garfield Spider-Man someday?
I think there is, I don't know about that exactly, but I think there is a possibility. And I think there are some kind of plans out there for Null to return. I don't know what Sony's doing now that I never do, but I especially don't now because there are no other, you know, Sony Spider-Verse movies planned right now, at least live action ones, right? Like outside of Craven that's releasing, but that movie should have already come out. Like there's no pre-production greenlit project other than that. So it's like, is Kevin Feige and Disney going to be like, yeah, let's bring this dumb character into the MCU now? I don't totally see that. And honestly, like, I don't know what the behind the scenes have been for making Spider-Man 4 and like how they've come to an agreement on like what that story is going to be. I am a little bit nervous about what it will be, especially because now it's coming out after an Avengers film, which Spider-Man will almost certainly be in. And it's like, how does that look? So yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the odds are pretty good because I don't know. There's no public plans right now, but say Sony does announce some kind of like crossover villain film next, he'd probably pop up in that.
Wow. So we might get to see his chair again. I mean,
I was gonna say by pop up out of his chair.
Maybe. And what's funny is like the movie is like he's defeated, and it's like he didn't get it right. So it's like now it was his introduction, but now we're gonna go back, and then suddenly he will be unleashed. Because what's funny to me is like, for not to go on a rant here,
please rant.
In the MCU, there was a villain in a chair. There was Thanos, right? The end of Avengers 2012. He turns around with a smile on his face. He comes back in his chair in Guardians. He's in a chair. He turns around. He's smiling, right? And that people were so psyched to see what that would be in the future. Fine, I'll do it myself after Age of Ultron. All these like little teases. And I feel like for them, they're trying to develop something like that where it's like this mysterious figure that's super powerful, this cosmic energy out in space, just like hasn't been like, be able to take off the gloves and just go crazy. And for the MCU, obviously that worked because it was very well done, at least in my opinion, of like setting it up, and then he ends up being this like great villain in Avengers. But with this new guy with Null, there's none of that. It's just like he basically is the main villain of this film and is defeated and stays locked up. And now we're just supposed to say, okay, next time he'll be back again, and now he's gonna get unleashed. It's so tired. There's no, I honestly think they shoehorned that in post-production. That's just my opinion. I don't know for sure, but it felt that way to me, at least.
Yeah.
To try to give that what Sony's best at is trying to copy what the MCU does in the worst way possible. In the most brain dead way possible, honestly. It's like, like evil guy in chair set up this movie. Oh, it's just his introduction. He'll be back. No one gives a shit if it's not a good story and there's not an actual plan in place. And just because you own Spider-Man doesn't mean we want all of his villains and all of Venom's villains in every effing movie, Like, it boggles my mind how little Sony has learned over the last 14 years since Spider-Man 3, right?
I mean, you look at you nailed it. Thank you for that rant. Thank you for your ranting.
That's why you bring me on, right?
Of course, we bring you on for the insight and the comic book rants, and you nailed it because Sony looked at the MCU. They looked at Thanos in a chair, and they said, "Okay, that's the key: is the villains in a chair." And so they said, the main thing about Null is he's got to be in a chair. And what they missed is that it's not just about Thanos being in that chair. It's that Thanos got up out of that chair and said, now I'll do it. And the problem with Null is the entire movie, he's a man stuck in a chair. And when the movie ends, he cannot get out of that chair. And that is what they missed. Thanos got out of the chair. You cannot get people interested in an entire cinematic universe, in future sequels, with the promise of here is a villain who cannot get out of his chair. Thanos got out of the chair. Null remained trapped in a recliner, in a Barca lounger, and that is not what's going to get a villain in with his butt in a seat is not going to get people's butts in seats. And that is what they missed.
Here's the question, though, because Doctor Doom as we know, is being played by Robert Downey Jr., which
Mm-hmm.
last time you were on the show, maybe not last time, but a
Few
few
appearances
times
ago, yeah.
before, you sort of turned us around on the prospects for that because we're the BO boys, obviously, and that looks to be a box office driver, which I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But Doctor Doom, as we know in the comic books, he rules a kingdom and he sits on a throne.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the chances of when we see this metallic menace,
Mm-hmm.
his ass is going to be sitting in a chair? I
Yeah, and Clayton, your ranting has become so strong that you've blown your mic out, so you could go fix that. But Clayton was talking about Doom being in a throne, and what is a throne but an expensive chair? And I think they've got to be very careful. After seeing Null, they've got to take the right lessons. Doom has to be able to get out of that throne/chair. He has to be able to do it. He cannot spend the entire movie trapped in his throne, trapped in his chair. They have to learn this lesson. So this movie opened at 51. We'll see where it goes. The audience, score is not strong. B- is tough, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Is this the last Tom Hardy appearance as Venom, do you think?
Yeah.
Is this really his last dance? I mean, he's made so much money, you would assume, and he's probably not itching to do a fourth Venom after this third one was received this way, but maybe I'm wrong. David, do you think that Tom Hardy will be back?
I think there's a chance he'll come back in some kind of in a Spider-Man movie, maybe even Avengers movie. Probably not an Avengers movie, but maybe in a Spider-Man film or whatever Sony has planned in the future. Like I think they've been very coy in the sense of like this is the last Venom movie, but they're not. But it's the last Venom movie, but Noel is just getting set up, and like we have no other plans for the future. But like there must, if Noel's getting set up, what is he getting set up for?
Right.
The answer to me is not Spider-Man 4. Like there's just no way. Like that's going to be produced by Disney, and like when Feige's involved, it's not just going to be like, sure, Sony, we're gonna use your crappy villain you set up already, and you already used basically, right? Like you already used this guy, so no, I think the odds are actually probably higher than 50% that Hardy will come back in some form or fashion just because there is a potential for him to cross over with Spider-Man. And by the way, give it a couple years. I'm going to hop back on the BO boys. Miles Morales is coming too. And that's going to be a huge, I think, moment for this universe for what they do with it, because there is a world, which I do not want to see, where they make a young Miles Morales the like Sony Spider-Man in this kind of universe, and for them to play with while Tom Holland does his thing. And I think there is a chance that's where they're going, which would be pretty upsetting for me.
Okay. Venom in the comic books is a villain at different points, right? Or
Totally.
Okay. So could that someday be a huge Spider-Man movie? Is Venom not as, sweet, friendly, I love my buddy Venom, but in being the asshole Venom that people love from the comic books, like trying to cut Spider-Man's head off? Like, could that be a way to go, even maybe for a Spider-Man 4? Here is Venom, and this dude wants to eat Spider-Man's head.
Totally. I think it's definitely a possibility. And I mean, they left some of the black goo, the symbiote was left in that universe at the end of No Way Home. They did not retcon it in The Last Dance, which was a weird move because they basically reshot the same scene, but didn't retcon anything necessarily. They just kind of like showed things in a different way, which is like kind of a continuity error, but it doesn't. That's what I'm saying with Sony. It doesn't matter. They just kind of do whatever they want. And then speak about doing whatever they want with Sony. They just cast whoever too. Like Trilogy 4 is just this random like officer. Riz Ifans, I think that's how you say his name. He was the Lizard as recently as in Spider-Man No Way Home, and then is some random hippie dad in a Venom movie.
You're right. He was a lizard in another movie, and now he's just a guy who wants to see aliens in a van.
It's so frustrating as a fan because it's like, you would think that would mean something and be interesting. Like, this is a guy that, as Sony Pictures, you signed over 12 years ago to be the leading villain in your rebooted Spider-Man movie. He comes back for No Way Home in a voice, right? He wasn't able to make it for filming. And then he's just this random character. I mean, he's collecting checks. Good for him. He's just a random character in Venom with and they don't address it at all. And like, I know like maybe no one noticed it or no one really cared besides like nerds like me. But to me, it inherently over time makes me see, and it shows me time and time again how little Sony cares about the fans. It's like, man, like, that's interesting. That's different. Maybe there's a connection. Robert Downey Jr. is not coming back as Dr. Doom, and it's not going to be addressed that he looks like Tony Stark, right? Like, it's not just going to be like this thing. I mean, maybe it will. I don't know. But I think there is going to be a moment.
Right. I think it will be acknowledged. Yeah.
It will 1,000%.
Scene or something.
Well, because there's even a chance, I mean, not to get too deep comic book nerd, but like there's even a chance that the version of Doom he's playing is mimicking that face for a reason. Like, there's a chance there is some kind of like play in there, even though in my opinion that won't be the direction. They're going to make him look aesthetically a lot different than Tony Stark, even though will obviously still be RDG down there. It's just kind of the point, man. And that's the thing. I think honestly, like as a fan, I wanted to succeed box office wise. As a fan, I'm not that upset because they needed to learn their lesson. Like they did with Madame Web. They kind of did with Morbius in these ways. Like, they need to understand that like you can't just release garbage, be like smack whatever character on it, and it makes $500 million or whatever, right? Like the first Venom movie just set such a terrible precedent, I think, for this entire universe, which is, I think, held back a lot of those characters in really big ways.
Yeah. Something that really interesting about this Venom opening, and you compare it to the Deadpool and Wolverine opening over the summer. Up until these two movies, I would say Deadpool and Venom were actually about at the same level. You know, two movies, they'd both done around the same number. You know, up until this third movie, correct me if I'm wrong, but Deadpool hadn't done $1 billion in either of his first two movies. They all were doing around that 700-800 million, or I guess Venom 2 dropped a lot because overseas it didn't have China, but they were at the same level. And meme-wise, if you look at the memes online, Venom, Deadpool, they were meme for meme. You know, you would see them, people would have a dancing Venom, they'd have a dancing Deadpool. They'd have a, Venom singing to Gasolina, you'd have Deadpool singing to Gasolina. So they were really at the same level until this year. And then with these two movies, it's clear Deadpool has lapped Venom. Deadpool is the choice for the wise mouth, masked bad boy of these superhero movies. And until these two movies opened, I'd always seen them at about the same level. And now it's Deadpool's blown him out of the water.
Definitely. I mean, with Deadpool 2, it's Deadpool and Wolverine, obviously getting Hugh Jackman back, being a Disney film, being in the MCU, even though the movie's not really about being in the MCU at the end of the day. All that juice just brought so much to it. And by the way, I mean, to that same effect though, if let's just play Fantasyland. If in between Let There Be Carnage and The Last Dance, if Disney bought Sony Pictures, or they bought the full rights back to Venom and Spider-Man and all this, Venom right now would be cruising to probably $1 billion. It's one of those things where like once you let them actually play in the sandbox and you bring an iconic character that people really are drawn towards. We saw with Deadpool and Wolverine, like with the first Venom and Let There Be Carnage to a certain extent. Fans, it's a very recognizable villain, very recognizable character. People really love it. Like there's a deep love for Venom in just the comic books. And you put that in Disney, with Disney cinematic universe, all that good stuff. It's going to work out really well for you, just like it has with Spider-Man, right? Yeah. Spider-Man was not a $1 billion franchise movie by movie until Disney, until Far From Home, until No Way Home. And that's not a mistake. It's pretty obvious. And I think fans over time are getting more and more wise to that. And that's kind of, I think, why we saw Deadpool and Wolverine to a certain extent perform so well, because it now was a part of this greater universe. It was a multiverse story. And we can, like, we can shit on the multiverse stories, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, Deadpool and Wolverine, these true blue multiversal stories in the MCU, they've all killed it, right? And it's going to continue that way, honestly. I genuinely think it will with these Avengers movies coming up.
Yeah. You nailed it. Disney brought Deadpool up to the major leagues, and Venom has stayed in the minors with the Sony movies. And Deadpool, what they did is not just do a multiverse, but they did the multiverse of, let's make fun of all of the failed or forgotten Fox universe characters. So they brought in Blade, they brought in Elektra, they brought in Johnny Storm, and Deadpool gets to do his jokes. You failed, you failed, you failed. You're an idiot. You stink. You smell. And everyone loves it.
Yeah.
If Venom 3 had been, here comes Madame Web, here comes Morbius. Bring in, even though the movie hasn't opened yet, bring Kraven the Hunter into Venom 3 and make fun of how Kraven the Hunter bombed, even though it opens next month. That version of Venom 3, where Venom is going around and he's like, Eddie, Kraven bombed. And then they say, well, actually, Kraven doesn't come out until next month. He's like, Eddie, it bombed. That Venom 3, that does $1 billion. That does $1 billion. If you get the Deadpool-esque Venom goes around, bites the head off of Morbius, bites the head off of Madame Web, or he bites the top of the soda can off so that she finally gets the soda can open. That would have been the movie that hits.
I'm with you. That sounded a lot more, that honestly sounds better than what we got. So
yeah, definitely. So, Clint, any final word on this Venom 3? I mean, we really dug into this thing. You slept through most of the movie. You've had some, I wouldn't say slept through, but you've been on and off of the show so far. So what do you have to say to bring us home on Venom 3?
Well, I mean, I don't think I'm the one to bring us home. But this has nothing to do with our illustrious guest, who I think always is smart and incisive and knows about superheroes. But even talking about Venom 3, I was sleeping.
Okay. Wow.
And that is not disrespectful to David Thompson. I hope you don't think that, because I do.
No.
I did wake up when you started talking about Deadpool and its success, but I will not lie and say that there's something Venom 3 related, narcolepsy, that I might need to go to the doctor for once I get healthcare in the distant future.
Yeah, well, we got to get you checked out, and
Craven's gonna be fun.
Yeah,
yes,
and that'll be a live episode where we just put Clayton out on a slab and we take him apart and we see what's going on in there. So before we go, I want to throw one movie at you that we teased. The next big movie, the next big quote unquote blockbuster, again depending on how Here does, is Red One, November 15th. It's not a comic book movie, but it's got those trappings. It feels a little bit wacky comic book-ish. So, David, the tracking came out this week. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson teaming up with Chris Evans, and it's $36 million is the current projection for opening weekend. The movie cost $250 million. Add another $100 million for empty Voss water bottles. We're up in the $300-400 million range. Where are you at on this Red One? Does that $36 million feel high, low? Or are people underestimating the power of Santa Claus and The Rock?
No, I think that seems high. I don't think that movie's going to do well at all. I think it's going to be, if you hadn't told me that number, 36, I would have said less than $20 million.
Wow.
Here's the thing, this is how movies work these days. There's those of us that go all the time and see movies every week. And then there's those that go out 4 times a year. And by the way, 2 weeks after this movie comes out, that's when people are going to go back to the theater. Gladiator 2, Wicked, and Moana. If you're sitting there and you only get to use X amount of times going to the theater, I mean, I'm breaking it down very we're not computers, right? But that's how people work. That's how people think. And families especially, Wicked, and if you're a family, Wicked and Moana. That's what you go to the movie theater to see. In just a couple weeks later during the holiday, I couldn't be more down in that movie. And like, to me, and that's just me being critical, it feels very soulless. It feels like a soulless Hollywood flick that's not going to be good. The actors are there for a paycheck, and it's trying to throw ideas, stars, and cinematic tantalizing imagery at us just for the sake of it. And I don't think we're gonna fall for it this time. And I think, honestly, I think a lot of people, when they see that trailer on TV and it doesn't say Netflix at the end, are really surprised. It's like, theaters, this should be like, I thought Chris Evans only does Netflix movies now, right? Like, literally,
Yes.
I genuinely think that's what people believe. So no, I am down. I'm going below 36 million. This far out, things can change, but no faith.
David, I saw that poster in the theater and thought it was a Netflix movie.
Yeah.
Like, I seriously was going up the escalator to go see a movie, and I saw a Red One poster, and I thought I read Netflix at the bottom of it because it just looks like a Netflix movie. I think you're right about the cynical nature of this. The Rock has said this is a franchise already. He's speaking of it as a franchise, not as a singular movie. And yeah, I think that this is, are you going to really corral your kids before the holidays, get them in the van, and get them like drive them an hour to the movie theater, spend candy, money on candy and popcorn and all these things for Red One, when, like you said, they're going to want to see Wicked. They're going to want to see Moana 2, Gladiator 2 for the older kids and the like adults. Like, it is a pain in the ass for a lot of families to go to the theater, and they're not going to corral people to go see Red One.
Yeah.
And what even is Red One's target audience? Explain that to me. It's PG-13.
Yeah.
It like what? I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not. So maybe I'm not the demographic. But I don't even know what the demographic is. Like, is it teenagers? Is it the teens? But like, teens aren't going out to the theater to see Red One, right? Like, I don't think teens give a shit about The Rock. I'm sorry, Dwayne. I don't think that's the case anymore. People cared about Chris Evans when he showed up in Deadpool and when he was Captain America, but they don't care about Chris Evans as Jack-o'-lantern or whatever his stupid character is in that film. Like,
he
I
plays
think
the
that
world's greatest tracker.
Right.
He plays the world's greatest tracker.
Which kids love trackers. Kids love trackers.
Is it supposed to be like a Dwayne The Rock Johnson superhero kind of a thing? Like, is that what they're trying to get at? Like, is it? I know it's not superheroes and stuff, but is it supposed to be this like action Christmas? I don't even know. Like, I genuinely like that. I think that is that film's biggest problem, even more than the budget, is who is it for? Who is the target demographic? Who are they targeting? Like, are they on TikTok? Are they trying to like Venom? I think is always really smart about their like online marketing and stuff. They kind of get they're a joke and they kind of like lean into that a little bit, and people like buy into like just kind of what that is. With this kind of a film, I'd have no idea what they're going for and who they're targeting, and that is going to be the reason it blows up in their faces.
Yeah. Wow. You nailed it. Who is this movie for? And people assume it's on Netflix, which is doubly bad because this movie is produced by Amazon. So not only are they putting in theaters and people think it's on Netflix, eventually it'll be on Amazon Prime and people will think it's on Netflix. So no one is going to find this movie on any platform because they will just be scrolling Netflix thinking, oh, I wonder if that Rock poster I saw is on here yet. Yeah, this is going to be a disaster. I mean, Clayton and I, we've got the final leg on this 2024 tour, the BO Boys Live, goes to Boston Saturday, November 16th. Clayton and I bought tickets to see Red One on Friday, November 15th in Boston. We're seeing it there so that we're ready for the show the next day. We bought our tickets. As of now, we are still the only two people in this screening of Red One. The only two. We have a private screening. Maybe this is the screening. I'm sure The Rock is going to go around to all these different cities, come right before the movie, surprise everyone and wave and say hi and welcome you to Red One, welcome you to the multi-platform shopping experience that is Red One. And I am praying that he has on his list stopping by this Boston theater on November 15th. He walks in, and the only two people sitting in that theater are Pat and Clayton, the BO boys.
Well, Pat, and I've
His
said
worst
this.
nightmare.
I said this previously, that if I see The Rock,
Yeah.
I have a bottle of piss for him.
Wow.
I've said
Gotta
this.
be Voss. It cannot be Aquafina.
Of course it's Voss. And in my bag, my satchel, I will have a Voss water bottle full of urine at Red One in Boston, just in case.
Wow.
Just in case.
All the wanna BO boys, wanna BO girls, wanna BO people who are listening to us in Boston, come to the private BO boy screening and witness Clayton possibly handing The Rock a Voss water bottle full.
Handing it.
You gotta hand it. You gotta walk up and hand it to him. Look him in the eye. You gotta look him in the eye. You look a man in the eye when you hand him a bottle of piss. No,
I'm tossing that sucker. Now, if The Rock doesn't show up, any lucky fan who is there will get a signed Voss water bottle full of my urine, signed by me and Pat.
Okay, I mean, I can't make that promise.
It's closed tight.
I'll sign something. But I'm not promising it'll be on the Voss bottle.
It's tightly closed.
So, David, coming off of that, anything that you would like to promote, let our listeners know. Of course, we let our listeners know. Come to see a screening with us and get a signed bottle of Clayton's urine. What would you like your fans or our fans to know about what you have coming up?
Yeah, sure. The Direct Podcast. We've been reviewing. Well, we have the news every Monday, plus our Penguin reviews. That's been an excellent series over on HBO, in my opinion. Also, Agatha. It's Halloween, and Agatha is coming to an end. A 2-part finale this Wednesday, Thursday. We're doing a review on that, and that'll be the totality of the series. So that's gonna be really exciting. And yeah, man, just thedirect.com. Check it out. Writing about a whole bunch of stuff. I just wrote about I put together a budget versus box office report on Terrifier 3. So go check that out. That was a really fun article to write. I love stories like that. I will not see that movie, hard pass, but man, do I love to see it make as much money as it has, and probably even more because of the wild robot and all those kids sneaking in. And so yeah, check all that out. Thanks, guys.
The second we get out of here, I am going right to the Direct to read that article about Terrifier 3's budget, and I love it. I love it. So all wanna BO boys, wanna BO girls, wanna BO people. Go right to the Direct, read David's article. That sounds fantastic. Of course, email us, theboboyspodcast@gmail.com. 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media at the BO Boys Pod on Instagram. Our Instagram is blowing up, TikTok. And those vertical videos are all courtesy of not Wanna BO senior intern anymore. He got the promotion at the live show. He is now VP of interns, Christopher. He's doing the vertical videos. He got the promotion and everything that comes with it, which is nothing. So congratulations, Christopher, on the promotion.
Pat, can I comment on that?
Of course. Yeah, you were there. You saw the clap-o-meter happen, and you were right there.
He did not get the promotion, okay? He earned the promotion.
Yep.
All right? Definitive. He earned it.
So
the kid earned it.
Hit play on every single video at the live show, perfectly on time. Everything, the sound and the video was in sync. He nailed it. VP of interns, Christopher. So follow us on social media. Watch us on YouTube. We are YouTubers. Hey guys. And the David, the live special, the New York City show, is up on YouTube right now. It doesn't have the short films. We tore those throughout the tour. So with that, the monologue, the stuff that does go across from city to city, but it's still, even without that, a 1-hour special. The BO Boys live from New York is on our YouTube channel. The games, the segments, the live segments. We had Sean Donnelly being terrified of Terrifier 3. We had Brett of the New Flesh. All sorts of audience games and shenanigans. The live special, live from New York, on our YouTube channel right now. 1-hour special that we just dropped.
I love it.
So yeah, I mean that is what's going on. It's been a wild week, and it's going to be a wild couple of months as the holiday seasons heat up. So, man, I mean, I got nothing else, Clint. I'm spent.
Pat, you said it all. I don't think there's anything left to be said.
Oh, thank God, I'm out of here.
Except for, until next time, we'll smell you at the box office. Nailed it.